Viv for telling my mom to ask my brother for the mortgage since he's inheriting the house? I'm Vivian, 52, and in my family, the responsible one was never a compliment. It was a job title nobody asked me to accept, but everyone expected me to perform. I was the daughter my parents called when the mortgage was short, when the property tax notice came in, when the water heater died, when my brother Grant needed just a little help getting through the month. I kept grocery lists on the backs of old envelopes. I saved every receipt even when I didn't need to. I remembered renewal dates, passwords, due dates, account numbers, and which drawer my mother kept the spare checkbook in. For years, I thought helping my parents meant I was being a decent daughter. What I didn't know was that while I was keeping their house standing, they had already decided it would never belong to me in any way that mattered. My parents, Marilyn and Robert, weren't helpless people. They had managed their lives for decades. They paid bills, raised children, kept up a home, argued over thermostat settings, and made Sunday dinner like every family I knew growing up. But as they got older, the little gaps started becoming my job. First it was small. Vivian, honey, the electric bill was higher this month. Could you cover the difference? Just this once. Then it was the insurance premium. Then the water heater. Then a property tax shortage. Then the mortgage payment was a little tight because your father's prescription changed. Then the garage door jammed, and my father said he could probably fix it himself, which meant he stood in the driveway staring at it until my mother called me and said, "Can you please just send someone before he hurts himself?" I paid the repairman directly that time. I still had the receipt in my email because of course I did. Every request came wrapped in the same soft paper. We would never ask if it wasn't serious. It's only temporary. You know we're good for it. You're the only one who understands this stuff. And the one that always landed exactly where my mother wanted it to land. Family takes care of family. Grant was family too, but somehow that sentence never seemed to point in his direction. Grant was 49, my older brother, and everyone had spent his entire life explaining him to me. If he missed a birthday, he was overwhelmed. If he forgot to bring anything to dinner, he was busy. If he borrowed money and didn't pay it back, he was embarrassed and I shouldn't make him feel worse. If he quit something, changed plans, lost paperwork, ignored a call, or showed up late with a charming smile and empty hands, my parents would sigh like the world had been too hard on him. "Your brother has always had a hard time," my father liked to say. "You know how he is." I knew exactly how he was. Grant could float through a room, make 3 jokes, kiss my mother on the cheek, and somehow leave with leftovers and gas money. I could spend an afternoon sorting their medication list, balancing their household budget, and calling the mortgage company, and still be told I sounded tense. His struggles made him sympathetic. My competence made me available. I didn't resent him every day. That would take more energy than I had. Most of the time I just absorbed the unfairness like background noise. I told myself my parents were aging, Grant was Grant, and I was lucky enough to be stable. I told myself I didn't care about inheritance. I had my own life, my own bills, my own savings. I wasn't hovering around their house waiting for a payout. But there's a difference between not needing something and being erased from it while you're still paying to protect it. The whole thing started with a folder. My mother called me on a Tuesday morning, while I was rinsing out a coffee mug. "Vivian, do you still have that little scanner thing on your phone?" "I can scan from my phone, yes." "Your father can't find the digital copies for the house insurance. And there's something with the property papers. I don't know. It's all in a stack." "What do you need scanned?" "Just everything in the stack. You're better at keeping things organized than we are." That was another one of her compliments that came with a chore attached. I went over after lunch. The house smelled like lemon cleaner, and the chicken soup my mother made whenever she wanted the day to feel calmer than it was. A property tax notice was stuck to the refrigerator with a faded magnet shaped like an apple. The envelope had already been opened. I noticed that first because I always notice bills. My father was in his chair watching a game with the volume too low to hear. He lifted one hand when I came in. "Hey Viv." "Hi Dad." My mother came out of the hallway with a thick manila folder pressed against her sweater. "Here. It should all be in there. Insurance, taxes, maybe the mortgage escrow thing. Just scan the whole stack." I sat at the kitchen table where I had sat 1,000 times before. Same fruit bowl. Same scratches in the wood near my father's place. same little ceramic rooster my mother refused to throw out even though its beak had been chipped since I was in high school. I opened the folder and started scanning documents one by one. Insurance renewal. Property tax statement. A letter about an escrow adjustment. Home repair invoice. Then a page slid loose from the middle of the stack and landed face up beside my phone. The title at the top read, Updated Will and Home Transfer Notes. I froze. I didn't dig. I didn't go searching for private documents. My mother had handed me the folder and told me to scan everything in the stack. But the page was right there and my name was on it. That's what made me look. Not curiosity. Not greed. My name. There was a section labeled Family Support History. Under it, in neat flat language, it said that any past financial contributions from Vivian were considered voluntary family support and didn't create reimbursement rights, ownership interest, or expectation of equity in the residence. I read it twice because my brain didn't want to accept the first version. Voluntary family support. That was what they called the mortgage gaps, the property tax, the insurance premiums, the repairs, the utility bills, the late fees I had quietly covered so my father wouldn't have to get another warning call. A sentence. Years of checks and transfers turned into a sentence that protected everyone except me. Then I saw the next page. Grant was listed as sole beneficiary of the house. Grant was also named primary executor. The summary said my parents believed I understood Grant's need for additional family support, and that their estate plan reflected their desire to keep the home in the family through him. I understood nothing, because no one had told me. My mother was standing at the counter cutting a banana into a bowl of cereal even though it was the middle of the afternoon. She hummed under her breath. My father coughed in the living room. I sat there with my phone in my hand and felt something inside me go very still. My mother turned around. Everything okay? I slid the page back into the stack. I just need some air. She looked annoyed before she looked concerned. That was how I knew she thought I had seen something. Vivian. I'll finish scanning first. And I did. I scanned every page she had handed me, including the estate summary, because she had asked me to scan the stack. I emailed the files to her like always. I emailed myself a copy too like always because I was the one they called when they couldn't find things. Then I left. I didn't cry until I got home. It wasn't loud crying. It was the embarrassing kind where you sit at the edge of your bed still wearing your shoes, staring at the wall, and wiping your face with the heel of your hand because you don't want to admit how much something hurt. I had told myself for years that I didn't care about the house. But apparently I cared about being lied to. That night I opened my laptop and started pulling records. Bank transfers labeled Mom House. Tax shortage. Insurance. Utilities. Garage door. Water heater. Mortgage gap. I found screenshots of texts from my mother. Honey, I hate to ask, but the home insurance went up again. Your father is worried about the property tax. Can you help before the penalty hits? The water heater is making that awful noise again. I know you're busy, but could you call someone? Mortgage is short this month. We'll pay you back after things settle. Things never settled. I found a late fee warning from the mortgage company that my mother had forwarded to me with a sad face emoji. I found the receipt from the garage door repair. I found a utility bill autopay confirmation from an account I had forgotten I was still covering. I found a water heater invoice that made me close my eyes because I remembered my father saying, "Don't tell your brother. He'll feel bad he can't help." I built a spreadsheet. First it was just for clarity. Then the number at the bottom became something else. Not proof that I was generous. Proof that I had been trained. The total was high enough that I got up from the table and walked around my kitchen twice. I felt embarrassed. That surprised me. I expected anger. I expected hurt. But embarrassment hit first, hot and childish. How had I let this become normal? The answer was simple. It had happened one emergency at a time. A few nights later, we had dinner at my parents' house. I almost didn't go, but I wanted to see how they acted now that I knew. Grant and his wife, Denise, were already there when I arrived. Grant was leaning against the counter eating crackers from the sleeve. Denise was helping my mother set out plates. "Viv," Grant said like he had never owed anyone anything in his life. "Good thing you're here. Mom couldn't remember if the tax thing was due this month or next." I set my purse on a chair. Interesting thing to ask me. He gave me a blank smile. You always remember the practical stuff. That was the family joke. Vivian remembers. Vivian handles it. Vivian finds the form. Vivian pays now and gets thanked later, if anyone remembers to thank her. Aunt Carol came too. She was my father's sister, 71, and one of those women who brought a pie to every gathering and apologized for it not being homemade even when it was. She had always tried to keep peace, which mostly meant she smiled tightly while my parents acted like Grant had been born allergic to responsibility. Dinner was meatloaf, green beans, and mashed potatoes. My mother kept pushing food toward Grant like he had just returned from war instead of from being 20 minutes late. My father started talking about the house halfway through the meal. The garage still sticking? He asked Grant. Grant shrugged. I noticed it dragging a little. It works, I said. My father looked at me. It only works because I paid the repairman last month. There was a small silence. My mother picked up her water glass. Vivian, not at dinner. Grant chuckled lightly, trying to smooth the moment over. Well, I appreciate it. I've got plans for that garage someday, so keep it in good shape for me. He said it like a joke. Nobody laughed. Or maybe I just didn't hear them. My father cleared his throat. Grant's always liked working with his hands. It would be good for him to have space when he takes care of the house someday. When he takes care of the house, I repeated. My mother's eyes flicked to my father. Aunt Carol, who had been cutting a green bean into pieces too small for any adult woman to need, looked up and said, well, at least Grant won't have to worry once the house is his. My mother froze. Grant looked down at his plate. My father's jaw tightened. I put my fork down. Once the house is his? Aunt Carol's face changed. I thought Vivian knew. My mother said, this isn't dinner conversation. No, I said. It sounds like it was everybody's conversation except mine. Grant leaned back in his chair. Come on, Viv. Don't make this weird. I looked at him. You knew. He lifted one shoulder. Mom and Dad make their own decisions. Did you know I was still paying for repairs? Everybody knows you help out. That wasn't my question. My mother's voice went soft. That was usually when the guilt started putting on its shoes. Don't make this ugly, Vivian. I almost laughed. Ugly was letting me pay for a house you had already promised to Grant. My father set his napkin beside his plate. Grant needs a leg up. You've always been able to stand on your own. There it was. The family constitution, recited from memory. Grant needed. I could handle. I asked, so I'm good enough to pay for the house, but not good enough to inherit any part of it? My father frowned. That is not fair. No, I said. It really isn't. Grant scoffed. It's not my fault they trust me with the family home. I turned to him. Funny, because I'm the one keeping it from being foreclosed on. Denise looked at Grant then just quickly, but I saw it. The first crack. The first time she seemed to realize the charming version of him might not match the math. My mother pushed her chair back slightly. We thought you'd be more mature than this. That one landed. It always had. Mature meant quiet. Mature meant swallow it. Mature meant pay and don't ask what happens after. I stood up. I'm going home. My mother said, Vivian. Picked up my purse. No. You wanted this to stay private. Congratulations. It did. From me. I left before dessert. That night I opened the scan folder again. I don't know what I expected. Maybe I thought reading it carefully would make it less bad, like there would be some paragraph that said, we love our daughter and recognize her sacrifices, but we are making a complicated decision for practical reasons. There was no paragraph like that. There was only the clean language of people protecting an arrangement they knew might look bad if spoken plainly. Then I found the printed email. It had been tucked behind the estate summary. I had scanned it because it was in the stack. It was from Grant to my parents. The date was months earlier. I read it once. Then again. Don't tell Viv yet. She'll make this about money and stop helping before the paperwork is final. Once everything is settled, she'll calm down. She always does. For a moment I heard nothing. Not the refrigerator. Not the cars outside. Not my own breathing. She always does. That was what he thought of me. Not sister. Not person. Function. She gets upset, then she pays anyway. I sat there until the screen dimmed. Then I started looking at dates. Grant had complained in the family group chat about his credit card around the same time my mother asked me for money because the insurance premium jumped. He had sent a message about his car making a grinding noise 2 days before my mother asked for medical copay help. Another transfer I made for utilities lined up with a text from Grant saying his account was negative and he couldn't cover Denise's registration renewal. At first I told myself I was reaching. Dates can overlap. Families have multiple problems at once. Then I found one text from my mother that made my stomach turn. Honey, could you send it to me instead of paying directly this time? The insurance portal is giving your father trouble. I'll handle it. That was the same week Grant wrote in the group chat, car is fixed. Don't ask what it cost. I'm eating sandwiches until next month. Except he hadn't been eating sandwiches until next month. I had been funding Grant through my parents. Not always, maybe. Not every time. But enough. Enough to make the lie bigger than the will. I didn't call anyone. That was the old me, the one who would have called crying and given them a chance to explain badly until I felt guilty for being upset. Instead, I opened every account connected to my parents' house. I removed my card from the utility autopay. I canceled the monthly, just in case transfer my mother pretended was never expected but always counted on. I deleted the reminder I had set for the property tax deadline. I printed my records. I made copies of the estate summary, Grant's email, the bank transfers, the repair receipts, the texts, the late notices, and the insurance requests. Then I sent one message in the family group chat. Since the house and estate are Grant's future responsibility, all house-related expenses should go through him from now on. My mother responded first. Vivian, that is a very hurtful thing to say. My father followed. Don't be petty over paperwork. Grant wrote, you're really going to do this over a will? I typed one sentence. No. I'm doing this because paperwork finally told the truth. Then I muted the chat. That was harder than I expected. Not because I wanted to argue but because silence felt rude. I had been raised to answer quickly, to reassure, to soften, to explain myself until everyone else felt comfortable again. For the next week, my mother left voicemails. The first one started sweet. Hi, honey. I know emotions are high. Call me when you calm down. The second was shaky. Your father didn't sleep. This is not good for his stress. The third dropped the sweetness. After everything we did for you, this is how you treat us? I saved all 3 and didn't call back. Grant texted me privately. You know they can't handle this pressure. I wrote, then don't pressure them. He sent back, I'm tight this month. You know I can't just come up with that kind of money. I stared at that one for a while. Then I wrote, neither could I. I just stopped pretending, that made it my job. He didn't answer. A month passed. Not a peaceful month. A loud buzzing, guilty month. My phone lit up with missed calls. Aunt Carol left one message saying, I'm sorry. I truly thought you knew. Denise texted once, then deleted it before I could read more than the preview. My mother sent a picture of a late fee warning without any words, as if the document itself was supposed to kneel in front of me. No one apologized. No one asked what it felt like to find my name reduced to voluntary support. No one said, we should have told you. They were waiting for me to cool down and become useful again. Then came the text. It was a Thursday morning. I was putting laundry into the dryer when my phone buzzed on top of the machine. Mom, the mortgage is due. No hello. No please. No shame. Just the bill, dropped into my lap like it had always belonged there. My hands were still warm from the towels. I looked at the message, and something in me that had been bending for years finally locked straight. I replied, then you should text the person inheriting the house. She called immediately. I let it ring. Then she called again. I answered the third time because I knew if I didn't, she would start calling neighbors, cousins, maybe my old friends, anyone who could be recruited into making me feel cruel. Her voice was already wet. Vivian, I cannot believe you would say something like that. I meant it. We are your parents. I know. We are not strangers asking for charity. No. You're my parents asking me to pay for Grant's inheritance. She gasped like I had slapped her. We never thought you would punish us for making a private decision. I'm not punishing you. I'm respecting your estate plan. Your father is very upset. I'm sure he is. Don't talk like that. Mom, if the house belongs to Grant in the future, then the cost of keeping it should belong to Grant now. He can't handle that kind of pressure. I closed my eyes. There it was again. Grant can't. Vivian must. I said. Then maybe he should not inherit a house he cannot help maintain. My mother's crying stopped so fast I could hear the anger underneath it. You sound bitter. I am bitter. That surprised her. Surprised me too. I had spent so long trying to sound reasonable that saying the honest thing felt almost impolite. She said, "At least you admit it." "Yes," I said. "I'm bitter because I was used. That does not make me wrong." My father called that afternoon. He didn't cry. My father believed emotion was something women used when facts weren't on their side, unless he was the one feeling disrespected. Then it became principle. "Family doesn't keep score," he said. I was sitting at my kitchen table with the spreadsheet open in front of me. "That's convenient for the people losing count on purpose." He made a sound of disgust. "You're stronger than Grant. We thought you understood that." "I understand it perfectly. You rewarded his weakness and taxed my strength. Don't twist this. The house should stay with the son of the family." There it was. Not even hidden that time. I leaned back in my chair. "Then the son of the family can pay the mortgage. You would let your mother worry herself sick?" "No. Grant would." My father was quiet. I added, "You named him executor. You made him sole beneficiary. You said he needs additional family support. Start treating him like the person you chose." He hung up on me. 2 days later, my mother announced a family dinner. Not asked. Announced. "We need to sit down as a family before you do something you regret." I almost wrote back, "I already did that for 30 years. Instead, I said I would come. I knew what they expected. They expected me to arrive alone and emotional. They expected my mother to cry, my father to speak in that low, disappointed voice, Aunt Carol to plead for peace, and Grant to look wounded until I felt mean. They expected me to fold because folding had been my role. I brought a folder. Not a dramatic one. No red tabs. No binder slammed onto the table like a courtroom movie. Just a plain folder with copies clipped in sections and a spreadsheet on top. When I walked in, my mother looked at it immediately. "What is that?" "If we're going to talk about money," I said, "we're going to talk about all of it." Denise was there, sitting stiffly beside Grant. Aunt Carol was at the counter, twisting a dish towel in both hands. My father sat at the head of the table like he was chairing a meeting. Grant looked annoyed before anyone had said anything. My mother had made baked chicken. No one ate. She started anyway. "We love both of our children." I sat down. "Don't start with a sentence nobody challenged." Her mouth tightened. Grant said, "This is exactly what I mean. You came in ready to attack." I opened the folder. "No. I came in ready to be accurate." My father pointed at the papers. "We are not doing this like some business negotiation. You made it one when you documented my money as voluntary support to protect the estate." Aunt Carol looked up sharply. "Robert, what does that mean?" My father didn't answer. So I did. I slid a copy of the estate summary into the center of the table. "It means the updated paperwork says my financial contributions don't count as loans, equity, reimbursement, or anything else. Just voluntary family support. It also says Mom and Dad believe I understand Grant needs additional family support, which is interesting, because no one told me Grant was getting the house." Denise slowly turned toward Grant. "You told me Vivian knew." Grant's face changed for half a second before he fixed it. I said I assumed she knew. "No," Aunt Carol said quietly. "You didn't. You said she was fine with it." My mother snapped, "Carol." Aunt Carol flinched, then straightened. "No, I'm not doing that. I thought Vivian knew because that is what you all let me think." For the first time that night, I felt less alone. I put the spreadsheet down next. These are the payments I could verify. Mortgage gaps, insurance, property tax, utilities, repairs, water heater, garage door, late fees. These are not guesses. They are bank records, receipts, and texts. Grant leaned forward. Nobody asked you to pay all that. I looked at him. You personally thanked me for the garage door last week. That's different. How? He looked at my parents. My mother said, we were going to explain everything eventually. I pulled out the printed email. No, Grant had a different plan. Grant's eyes narrowed. What is that? Your email. My mother whispered. Vivian. I read it aloud. Don't tell Viv yet. She'll make this about money and stop helping before the paperwork is final. Once everything is settled, she'll calm down. She always does. The room went so quiet I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. Denise stared at Grant. You knew she was paying for the house while you waited to inherit it? Grant lifted both hands. That's not what I meant. What did you mean? She asked. He looked trapped, and for once charm didn't come fast enough. I meant she gets emotional about being left out. I didn't want Mom and Dad stressed before things were finalized. I almost smiled, but there was no humor in it. You didn't want your funding source informed before the arrangement was legally protected. See? Grant snapped. You are making it about money. It is about money, I said. And honesty. And respect. You don't get to drain one person and call it family, then reward another and call it tradition. My father slapped his palm on the table. Enough. No, I said. Not enough. My voice didn't rise, but something in it made everyone stop. I took out 3 more pages. Mom, these are transfers you asked for. This one was supposedly insurance. This one was supposedly medical copays. This one was supposedly utilities. Her face went pale in a way that answered before she did. I placed screenshots from the family chat beside them. Those dates match Grant's credit card problem, his car repair, and his negative account. Maybe that is a coincidence once. It is not a coincidence 3 times. Grant said. Leave Mom alone. Denise said. Grant. My mother's eyes filled, but this time I didn't move toward her. He needed help, she said. The words came out small. I nodded once. And you used me to give it to him. My father said. Your brother was struggling. So were you, apparently. That was the lie that got me to pay. My mother pressed a napkin to her mouth. I did what I had to do. No, I said. You did what was easiest. You could have told me, Grant needs money. You knew I might say no. So you called it insurance. You called it medicine. You called it the house. Aunt Carol put one hand on the table. Marilyn, if she paid all this, then you need to stop acting like she imagined the problem. My mother looked betrayed, which was almost impressive. Grant pushed back from the table. This is ridiculous. She has money. She's fine. We all know she's fine. There it was again. The oldest excuse. Vivian can survive it, so it is not wrong. I turned the spreadsheet toward him. I didn't ask to inherit everything. I asked not to be treated like a wallet for something you already decided belonged to him. Denise's voice was quiet. Grant, did you actually plan to take care of any of this? He looked irritated now, not ashamed. I figured we'd deal with it later. Denise let out a short laugh that sounded nothing like amusement. You mean Vivian would deal with it later? Grant glared at her. That's not fair. She pointed at the papers. It looks pretty fair from here. My father rubbed his forehead. You're tearing this family apart. No, I said. I am removing my checkbook. If that tears the family apart, the family was already built wrong. My mother whispered. What do you want from us? That was the strangest part. I had asked myself that question all week. Did I want an apology? Yes. Did I want repayment? Part of me did, though I knew I would never see it. Did I want the house? No, not like this. Not as a prize tossed at me after being hidden from me. I want the blind transfers to stop, I said. No more mortgage gaps. No taxes. No insurance. No repairs. No utilities. No money passed through you that ends up with Grant. If there is a real emergency, send me the bill, the provider, and the exact amount. If I choose to help, I will pay the provider directly and keep documentation. My father looked furious. So now we need permission? No. Now you need transparency. Grant muttered. Unbelievable. I looked at him. What's unbelievable is wanting a house you can't afford to help keep. He said, I'm tight right now. You've been tight for 20 years. My mother said my name like a warning. I stood. I will not pay another bill attached to a house I was expected to save but not allowed to matter in. No one stopped me when I left. The fallout didn't happen all at once. Real life is slower and more annoying than drama. The house wasn't foreclosed on the next morning. Nobody fainted. Nobody was carried out in disgrace. Instead, late notices started showing up. A mortgage late fee hit. The property tax deadline got close enough that my mother began leaving voicemails in a voice that sounded like she had swallowed gravel. Robert says Grant needs more time. Grant is trying to move some things around. We just need help this one time while everyone figures things out. I didn't respond to the voicemails. When my father texted, Grant says he needs more time, I wrote back, then give him the same patience you always told me to give him. Some relatives heard Marilyn's version first. That version was simple and effective. I was angry about a will. I was punishing elderly parents. I had money and refused to help because I was jealous of my brother. A cousin called me and said, "They're old, Viv. You could have handled it softer." I said, "Maybe." That surprised her into silence. Then I added, "But soft is how they kept getting me to pay." Aunt Carol, to her credit, stopped staying quiet. She told a few people she had seen the spreadsheet. She told them I hadn't been upset about being denied a mansion or a fortune. I was upset because I had been paying to preserve an asset I was secretly excluded from while the chosen heir avoided responsibility. Some people changed their tone. Some did not. That was fine. I had spent too many years trying to be understood by people who benefited from misunderstanding me. Denise called me about 2 weeks after the kitchen table confrontation. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. She sounded tired. "I'm not calling to ask for money. I'm glad we're starting there." She gave a short, exhausted laugh. I didn't know the full story. I knew Grant said the house would probably be his someday. I thought you knew too. I thought everybody knew and had agreed somehow. That seems to be a popular excuse. I deserve that. I didn't say anything. She continued. He told me it meant we'd have security later. But he never mentioned the mortgage gaps. He never mentioned you paying taxes or repairs. When I asked how he planned to help them now, he said your parents shouldn't have put him in the middle. I looked out my kitchen window. The sky was gray, the kind of gray that made everything outside look flat. He loved being in the middle when the middle came with a deed. Denise sighed. That's what I told him. I didn't know what happened between them after that. It wasn't my job to know. That was new for me, not making Grant's consequences my assignment. My parents tried a different strategy after the late notices became real. My mother asked me to come over alone. I said no. Then she asked if she and my father could stop by my place. I said no to that too. So they called me together on speakerphone, which was their way of making a conversation feel official. My father spoke first. "We've talked." I waited. My mother said, "We can make sure you're included." "In what?" "The will," she said, like she was offering me a warm coat. "We can revise things. Make it more balanced." I closed my eyes. There it was. Not remorse. Negotiation. My father added, "But we need the house stabilized first. There are deadlines." I almost admired the efficiency. "So if I resume paying, you'll consider valuing me again?" My mother said, "That is not what we said." "It is exactly what you said. We're trying to fix this." "No. You're trying to restore the payment plan." My father's voice hardened. "You are being impossible." "No," I said. "I am being unavailable." My mother started crying softly. "You don't want to be part of this family anymore?" I looked at the folder on my table. I had kept it there for weeks, not because I enjoyed seeing it, but because I needed the reminder. The truth had weight. I don't want to buy my way back into a family that only values me when bills are due. My father said, "So you're really done?" "I'm done being the plan you hide behind." They sold the house 6 months later. Not because of one missed mortgage payment. Not because I destroyed them. Not because I wanted them homeless, which was the version one aunt tried to spread until Aunt Carol shut it down. They sold because the numbers had been bad for a while, and I had been the quiet patch over every crack. Without my money, they had to look directly at what the house cost. Grant couldn't cover the gaps. He made promises, asked for extensions, blamed timing, blamed stress, blamed me for creating urgency, and eventually admitted he couldn't take on the responsibility. He said, "I figured we'd deal with it later." Denise said, according to Aunt Carol, "No, you figured your sister would deal with it later." My parents downsized to a smaller place they could actually afford. Grant didn't get the family home. He didn't get the garage he had plans for. He didn't get to play future caretaker while I paid the present bills. The estate plan changed. I found out from Aunt Carol, not from my parents. Apparently they revised it again after the sale. I don't know the details and I didn't ask. That might sound strange after everything, but by then the will wasn't the point anymore. A revised document couldn't undo the text messages. It couldn't undo Grant's email. It couldn't undo my mother turning my transfers into his rescue fund. It couldn't undo my father saying the house should stay with the son of the family, while the daughter paid to keep the roof over that son's future inheritance. My relationship with my parents became quieter. Not gone, but narrowed. I still answered calls sometimes. I still cared if there was a real medical emergency. When my mother had a prescription issue, I called the pharmacy and paid the pharmacy directly. When my father needed a ride after a procedure, I arranged it and kept the confirmation. I didn't send cash. I didn't respond to vague panic. I didn't accept "we'll explain later" as an explanation. A hospital bill is an emergency. A late mortgage on Grant's future house was not. Grant and I barely speak. When we do, he is polite in the stiff way people are polite when they know you have seen the ugliest version of their math. Denise is colder with him now, at least from what I hear. Maybe they will work it out. Maybe they will not. Either way, I'm not the family cushion anymore. My mother still tries sometimes. A few months after they moved, she texted me a picture of a repair estimate for their new place. No words. Just the estimate. Old Vivian would have called within 5 minutes. I wrote back, "Did you mean to send this to Grant?" She replied, "Never mind." That was one of the most peaceful messages I had ever received. I know some people will still think I was cold. Maybe I was. My reply to the mortgage text was meant to sting. I will not pretend it was not. There are softer ways to say things, and I had used soft words for years. Soft words got me invoices. Soft words got me guilt. Soft words got my name placed in a document as voluntary support, while my brother's name was placed on the house. So yes, I became colder. But cold is not always cruelty. Sometimes it is what happens when warmth has been treated like a utility someone else can leave running. They said I abandoned them over money. I don't think I did. I think I finally stopped paying admission to a family that had already written me out. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.